What is up guys, welcome to another video. Today we are looking at 6 things that you need to know about Dying Light 2. If you haven't heard about this game or you just want to refresh your memory because this game has been delayed a few times, then I have got you covered because we will be looking at the release date, the setting, the story and so much more. But before I do get into the video, if you enjoy the content here and you want to see a bit more about Dying Light 2, especially when that news is released, then I highly suggest that you do subscribe and turn on the notification bell. That way whenever new information is released about Dying Light 2, we can cover it here on the channel and you are immediately sent a notification to say that video is uploaded. If you do want to catch up on other platforms, then links to everything can be found in the description down below. But getting back into the video. Dying Light 2 was a game that I was very excited for. We started to cover it here on the channel, but because of delays pushing the game back and then Techland not actually saying anything about it for quite some time, there was nothing to actually talk about. So we did stop posting videos on the subject, but now because there is a release date in mind, a whole lot of information has been coming out and we will be getting a lot more over the next couple of weeks and months. So let's get into the 6 things that you need to know about Dying Light 2. The first one, and this is fairly new information, is the release date. Dying Light 2 originally had a spring 2020 release window. In January 2020, Techland announced that the sequel has been delayed. They initially mentioned a new release window until March 2021, saying that the game would release before the end of this year. On the 27th of May, Techland did bring out something new. They started to build up and hinting and suggesting that there was something a lot bigger coming and potentially it was going to be the announcement of the release date. They released the first episode of Dying to Know, which did cover a lot of information. But right at the end, it did also give us the release date that we've all been asking for. The release date is the 7th of December 2021. So as promised from Techland, the game will be releasing before the end of the year. If there is any delays, then we're cutting it very close. So fingers crossed that we do not get any delays between now and then. Now supposedly back in 2020, Dying Light 2 was very close to being finished. In fact, they even said that they had the whole story mapped out and everything was put into the game. It was just about polishing, and that's what they spent this last delay doing. So hopefully even if there was a delay, there isn't going to be something huge. It can only be by a couple of weeks. And this game is set to release for PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One and Microsoft Windows. Moving on, at number 2 we have Dying Light 2's setting. Now Dying Light 2 is set 15 years after the events of the first game, and it is set in an unidentified European city. This is not a crazy amount of info to go on, but it is more than enough for us to understand what type of environment that we will be free running across. It's also been described that the world is like the modern Dark Ages. Because the Haram virus broke free to the rest of the world, the whole world ended up collapsing. Civilization has fallen, there are no governments, and they have all lost access to technology. The buildings around them obviously still stand and they still have access to some technical components. But when you have power grids completely taken down, water supplies and dams also being taken up by factions and also not working properly, it's led people to go backwards rather than forwards. During the day, people go out and they scavenge to try and help their faction, and then at night time they all settle back indoors because that's when the infected come out. We've also learned after watching Dying to Know episode 1 that the world has become uninhabitable on the streets. This is because of the infected. It's not just humans and animals that can't live down there, but also plants and wildlife. This has led to wildlife going up a level. Now your trees, your flowers, your crops, any type of food supplies has all been grown on top of the roofs of the buildings that do remain, while the streets are left there for those that are infected. Moving on to point number 3. Dying Light's map is 4 times bigger than the original. And this is crazy to think about because the original Dying Light map wasn't exactly small when traveling across. There were moments where you did have to go through a loading screen as you go into an elevator or you want to travel to a different location. But when you go and put all of this together, including all the DLCs that were released, it is a very big location. And yet Dying Light 2's map is supposedly 4 times bigger, which is just insane to think of. But not just that, because this is set in an unidentified European city, because of how European cities are built, there's a lot more buildings around and they've taken advantage advantage of the verticality. You don't actually need to be watching this video to understand that parkour is a very big part of the game. It was very fun in the first Dying Light, jumping building to building, and in most cases within that game it wasn't crazy high. There were a few very high buildings such as the tower, which is where you start, and then the rest of the world was set up by 3-story, 2-story buildings, which you were still able to jump across, have a lot of fun. There was lots of paths for you to take, but with Dying Light 2 it's so much higher, and this is where Techland have taken advantage of the verticality. Because of this, they've also had to bring in other types of tools just so you can travel around the world. So all of this is very interesting. The map is 4 times the size of the original Dying Light, and on top of that it's going to be so much taller. Moving on to point number 4. There is going to be double the parkour moves. This is definitely something that needs to be added, especially when we look at a previous point when the map is 4 times the size. You gotta start thinking about how you're going to travel across that world without it feeling like you're just doing the same parkour moves over and over again. That's when it gets very repetitive, and that's when free running becomes very boring. But the good thing is that the developers have thought about this, as they have added double the parkour moves, so when you are free roaming about, you will have a very nice variation in the types of moves and the way that you jump across the world. This will lead to smoother animations and a much bigger variety. This also means that you can blend seamlessly into other types of moves. It doesn't necessarily need to be one parkour move to another. It could be one parkour move to a conflict move, to an attacking move, and you'll seamlessly be able to go into that. One very good example of this is the grappling hook that has been added to the game. The grappling hook is one of those tools that can be used for parkour. You're able to use the grappling hook so that you can swing from one location to another, and it's a very good way to travel the world. You could just as easily use the grappling hook to swing from one location to another, but as you're in the air, you can change to an attack. This is where you can get an aerial attack, and depending on what other weapons that you have will depend on the attack that's actually going to be played. You can start to see how double the parkour moves isn't just about parkour, but it is also about how it can seamlessly blend from other animations, whether it be attack or something completely different, because all animations have been improved across the whole board of this game. Moving on to point number 5, we have the Dying Light 2 story. For Dying Light 2, you are taking a role of Aiden Cadwell, an infected survivor looking for a cure in an unidentified European city where the player encounters and has the choice to aid various factions that are based within it that affect your outcome and gameplay. The game is set 15 years after the events of Dying Light, where the Haran virus has spread across the world and has evolved. This has led to the fall of civilization, which has brought on the modern Dark Ages. This is as much as what we know about the story for Dying Light 2, and we have already covered some of it within the previous points. The main takeaway from this is that you play as Aiden Cadwell, an infected survivor looking for a cure. And this does seem like the story for many different types of zombie films, TV programs, and even games that are already out there. Another very interesting thing about this story though is that it will be around 15 to 20 hours to complete. This has been confirmed in many different interviews from Techland themselves. But if you were to take a closer look and you were to go through the whole game and complete all the different side missions, the objectives, all the different challenges, any types of different dynamic events around the world, it will take you around about 100 hours to finish everything. So Techland has taken the approach of many other AAA developers in recent years for open world games. Many game companies have noticed that not as many people are able to go from the whole story when it is a 40-50 hour story. But they don't just want to completely reduce the game down to absolutely nothing but still be charging the exact same price. So instead they reduce the story down to around 10 to 20 hours, so it's more than enough time for you to enjoy a very good story, but also enough time for most people to be able to finish it. And then any other content that's supposed to be part of the game is put as side objectives, different challenges, different objectives, dynamic events. And this could lead to around 100 hours in the case of Dying Light 2. What makes the story very interesting is also the next point and the final point of this video. And this is that Dying Light 2 has narrative choices. We have already seen some of these narrative choices play out in some of the gameplay that Techland has provided for us. But after researching into this a bit more and actually looking at some of the interviews and articles that have been released, it turns out that with these narrative choices, there are no good choices. There is no right and wrong. It seems like it's wrong and wrong. Whatever you pick, you have to live with, and that's the ending. There is no going back on what you originally decided. There are story elements where you are given the option of your approach and what you have to do, and each one has its consequences. But also you can have situations where you take control of a stronghold and you have the choice in which faction controls it. And by deciding which faction controls that stronghold will also decide the surrounding area. This could be different types of parkour routes that will open up for yourself, different types of weaponry, different types of stores. And that will also open up other types of missions which will then have an effect within that area. With some of the narrative choices as well, it can open other type of content. There will be situations where two characters will come to you and give you two different suggestions which you will have to pick. If you pick one and after you've picked one you've realized that this was not the correct choice, the other character on the other side, which had the different idea, would be disappointed, angry, frustrated, annoyed with you. Now, as already said, you can't go back and change your original choice to get a completely different outcome. But what you can do is try to build bridges again. So you can talk to that other character, let that character know that you've made a mistake. And they will give you different types of jobs, different types of missions. And as you finish those missions, you can earn their trust back again. So this could be very, very interesting, and it could lead to some very complicated relationships around the different factions. And I am all for this. But anyway guys, those are 6 different things that you need to know about Dying Light 2. We do now have a release date being the 7th of December 2021, and I am very much looking forward to this date. If you do have any questions about this game, then feel free to leave them in the comment section down below. We'll be covering a lot of different news, a lot of different topics here on this channel. But anyway guys, thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did enjoy, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. But for now, I'm going to see ya.